Light the fires. Showtime.
And did you know that Geico offers motorcycle insurance? Oh, my lips are burning.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is the champion of the 65th run-in of the Daytona 500, his third career win. First win in 5.5 years for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. He won it on the last lap under caution after a big wreck ensued, and at the moment of caution, he was just ahead of Joey Logano. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is John Breeden. It's good to see you all again. A lot of craziness going on in the Daytona 500, as usual. So, coming out of the Daytona 500, there's obviously a lot to talk about. And the first thing I want to get to is probably one of the biggest complaints of the race, and that is the amount of commercials and the frequency of commercials during the NASCAR on Fox broadcast. Obviously, if you watch the Daytona 500, you would know there was a lot of commercials. Seemingly, when I was watching, it felt like just about every 10 laps. And somebody on my Instagram actually DM'd me and said it's actually about 4. It's about every 4 laps they're taking a commercial break. And I didn't really take it into account. For example, they would go to commercial at lap 10 and come back at lap 14, but then go to commercial at lap 21. So even though you went from 10 to 21, really you're still only getting 7 green flag laps. So I actually started to try and count the amount of commercials late in the race. I think it was 53 to go. They had a restart, and I think like 6 laps later, they went to commercial. It's kind of a blur, but it was something like 6. It was like they were averaging 1 commercial every 6 laps. Here's the thing. I know commercials are obviously essential for TV broadcasts, right? Without commercials, without sponsors, without promotions, NASCAR doesn't make any money. NASCAR needs to make their money. Fox has these advertisements that they have to run. But there's got to be a way they can do this without having a commercial break so frequently every 10 laps. Not to mention, not only would they do a commercial break just about every 10 laps, they would also have the in-race advertisements that we had to watch as well. For example, they would do let's do the Wendy's onboard camera with Noah Gragson. How about the Busch Light on board with Kevin Harvick? And of course, they would put up the little ad and they would say, I think Busch is doing like a sweepstakes or whatever. And, then Wendy's is doing a contest. They had to promote that. So, we're really not even getting, the race, in-race blocks we're actually getting, we're not even really getting actual analysis. We're still getting commercial breaks in between then. So, it's frustrating for the viewer, obviously. Obviously, they have to run X amount of commercials for whatever sponsors. They have to do it. Or else, again, they don't make money. So, obviously, they have to do it. I just think someone could come up with a better way of not, log jamming all these commercials at the beginning of the race. I think their idea is, we can do all the commercials at the beginning of the race, so when it gets down to the last 20, 30 laps, we don't have to go to commercial as much. But, it came all the way down to, 20 or so laps, and they're still going to commercial. So, I don't know. I don't know how you fix it. The TV station has to run, they have to run X amount of commercials. So, I don't know, but I think there needs to be a solution because there were a lot of angry race fans during this race. Just look at Twitter. Granted, Twitter doesn't reflect everything, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one sitting there thinking there were an excessive amount of commercials. So that's just something that the TV broadcast, I think, can work on. So let's get down to it. As I said, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. won the Daytona 500. Wasn't expecting that one. But, at Daytona, you really have to expect the unexpected. As I said in my preview show, or I guess my duels recap and my Daytona 500 prediction show, you got to go outside the box. you can't pick the favorites to win this race. I mean, if you look at the odds before this race, who were the big three favorites? It was Ryan Blaney. It was, I believe, Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott were the three favorites. Maybe Joey Logano was in there as well, which obviously would have been a good pick, knowing that he finished second. But Ryan Blaney crashed out early. Chase Elliott crashed out early in that second stage wreck with Tyler Reddick and Eric Jones. It really sucked for Chase Elliott. Eric Jones slid down the racetrack and then came right back up and got Chase. But you can't pick the favorites in this one. And obviously, if you watched my last video, I picked Brad Keselowski to win, and wasn't a bad pick in my personal opinion. After watching the race, Brad Keselowski led a lot of laps. He won the first stage, and he was in position in those last couple of laps. So I'm going to take you through the last couple of laps. So it was an interesting race playing out at this point. You had Brad Keselowski, you had Chris Buescher, the two RFK cars, lead in the race. Behind him, third and fourth, you have Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon, two RCR cars. Then you had William Byron in fifth. Okay, so you have two Fords and three Chevys. So it gets down to 3 to go, and Kyle Busch makes his move, and obviously Austin Dillon goes with him, William Byron goes with him. It was pretty much going to be a battle of the teammates. I mean, I feel like that was just going to play out. It's going to be the 2008 Daytona 500 all over again when, Kurt Busch and Ryan Newman, the Penske cars, dueled it out with Tony Stewart and Kyle Busch of the Joe Gibbs cars. So then, of course, the caution comes out. Daniel Suarez spins out, and that changes everything. And I felt like Kyle Busch was in prime position. Obviously, he was leading the race, coming to 2 laps to go. He was in prime position to win. And I don't know if who knows? We don't know at this point whether he would have won or not. But things were really getting antsy. I don't know if being the leader at that point was going to be good. I mean, granted, he did have his teammate Austin Dillon behind him. That's probably the best guy he could have had behind him. But, we've seen many times it's not always great to be the leader. I mean, look at the 2021 Daytona 500. Who knows? But Kyle was in a prime position to win. And so then we get down to this restart, this overtime restart. It would have been the first we had 2 overtime restarts. The longest Daytona 500 in history, by the way. Probably because of the amount of commercials. But regardless, no. But it was the longest Daytona 500 in terms of laps. But so we get down to the first overtime restart. And Kyle Busch chooses the outside lane. Austin Dillon chooses the inside. Bad call. I think had Kyle and Austin Dillon lined up on the same line, they could have gotten a push right from the start, and they would have been able to get ahead of Logano and whoever was on the outside by a couple of car lengths. Instead, they do the trick where Kyle chooses the outside and he's going to pull down in front of Austin Dillon and then go. What that did is Kyle had, Austin Dillon had to let Kyle in line. Kyle gets a big gap, and then he has to wait until Austin Dillon can get to him and push him. This not only hindered Kyle's progress, but this also stacked the entire field up. Bottlenecked the entire field, and when they hit the back straightaway, what happened? Austin Dillon got turned off the bumper of William Byron, and it was chaos. So that was a bad call. I don't know who made the call initially. I'd have to go back. I couldn't hear the radio or what was going on, but whoever made that call, I think it cost them. It ultimately cost them the 500. I feel like if they were in line, I mean, could they have wrecked when they were in line pushing together? Absolutely. Of course they could. We don't know that, but I think the better strategy would have been Austin Dillon gets behind Kyle Busch. They start on the inside of the front row or the outside, whichever line would have went. It seemed like the outside was getting the better runs, but had they been on whatever lane together, they could have pushed ahead, and one of the two could have won the race. So then they line up for the second overtime restart. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had gotten ahead in the schmaz there on that half lap coming to the white flag. So he's leading. and Joey Logano's lined up behind him. Take the green flag. Obviously, Stenhouse gets out front, and Joey Logano has the momentum, heading into turn one. He's got to run, and then obviously all hell breaks loose. Travis Pastrana gets turned, causes a bit of wreck. We've seen it before. Caution has to come out. I know a lot of fans were upset that the caution came out. I mean, quite honestly, when I saw the wreck, I knew that was it. And it had to be it. Because that wreck was, first of all, very violent. Kyle Larson took a hell of a hit, head on, very hard hit. A lot of hard hits in that wreck. Safety crews have to get to drivers at that point. It's one thing if it would have happened in 3 and 4. I understand being frustrated if they just called it in 3 and 4. It's like, why not let them race back? But the fact that it was down in turn 1, like, you're going to have all the guys coming back to the checkered. Still, they have to get slowed down by the time they get to turn 1. So it was going to be a mess. So I didn't really have a problem with the caution coming out. I know some fans were frustrated by it, but, NASCAR has stated, and granted, I'm not trying to defend NASCAR here. I know they have a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to their rules and things like that. But, I remember them saying at one point that, we throw the caution on the last lap if we feel a driver's safety needs to be attended to. And that was a very violent wreck. And obviously you can go to the Xfinity race and the amount of time they waited to throw the yellow when Sam Mayer flipped. It's a tough thing. It's you have to think of it like referees in football or officials in basketball. I mean, Kyle Busch described it one time, balls and strikes, an umpire in baseball. They're not, there's no, how do I say this? There's not just like a universal, okay, this is what happens. We're going to press the caution button now when this happens. Every wreck is different, and they're only able to press the button, whenever they get to it, I guess. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but my point is like, it's not going to be perfect. And to me, I just think this was the right call. Obviously, you can be frustrated at the moment when the caution came out if you're a Joey Logano fan. But, ultimately, this is just what happens. And this has been going on for a long time now. So, could they come up with a different rule? Sure. But, I don't know. Though, I do find it interesting. We'll talk about it in the Xfinity race actually later. But I guess I'll go ahead and bring it up now because I always thought the rule was when the caution light comes on, that's when the race is over. But now they're saying it's just whenever NASCAR hits the button, and it's not necessarily when the lights come on. So that was weird. They were talking about that in the Xfinity race the day before because, of course, the same thing happened with Austin Hill and John Hunter Nemechek and Justin Allgaier, but that was weird. But, I guess, regardless, it's the moment of caution. But I always just thought it was whenever the lights cut on. Because we've seen these scenarios before where caution comes out on the last lap, and they'll show the little camera of the caution light up in the corner. And when it turns yellow, they freeze the screen, and then you see, oh, so-and-so's in front. They win the race. So them explaining that during the Xfinity race was odd, but I don't know. I guess perhaps, I don't even know. But, yeah, Travis Pastrana got turned there on the last lap. I think Tony Stewart said it in the booth. You got to go for it. It's the Daytona 500. But I really like Travis Pastrana. I'm really happy he got to race the Daytona 500. He's a great guy. But this is just what happens when you don't have that type of experience. Travis Pastrana had never been in a Cup Series car. So when he got up there and the wreck wasn't his fault. Eric Almirola was just bump drafting him, and it was, he got turned around. But he's not used to this close corners type racing, and that's what happened. So it sucks, but it is what it is. We've seen this many times before, in Daytona 500s, in super speedway races. The caution comes out, and they freeze the field, and that's just how it is. Overall, I thought it was a good race. Except for the excessive commercials. The actual racing we did see was a lot of the good pack racing that we like to see, especially in the first stage. First stage was very fun to watch. Second stage kind of calmed down a little bit, but things picked back up by the end. There was a great second stage finish between Ross Chastain and Alex Bowman. Ross Chastain won that one. Brad Keselowski won the first stage. The Fords were strong all day long. I feel like each manufacturer sort of got their time to shine. You know, I think the beginning of the race, it was the Chevys leading, and then you saw a bunch of the Toyotas up there, and then you saw all the Fords up there. I mean, for the most part, the Fords were leading the charge, and there at the end, I mean, when everybody was taken out, it was just such a mix of different manufacturers. You had Chevy, Ford, Toyota, you had all of them up there. But yeah, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. wins the Daytona 500, his first win since Daytona in 2017, the July race. I mean, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has always been a threat at plate races, for better or worse. I mean, he has caused some wrecks, which has, he's gained a reputation for that. But, with this win, hopefully he can, at least in the eyes of some race fans, build up some credibility. I mean, he does have that credibility as a super speedway racer, even though he does, he has caused wreck in the past, but he is able to find his way to the front. And he's able to, be a serious threat in the final laps of the race. And, I mean, if you remember last year, he was leading with 8 laps to go in the 2022 Daytona 500. So he's been in position before, and he proved why he needs to be watched out for at these restrictor plate races. But I like it for Brad Daugherty too. Brad Daugherty, I feel, has always been one of the nice guys in NASCAR. He obviously played NBA for a while, but he's seems like just such a nice guy, and I'm happy he was able to get the Daytona 500 win as an owner. So yeah, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. wins, and now he essentially, I mean, I don't want to sit here and say he's guaranteed a spot in the playoffs, because if you remember last year, I mean, we got right down to it. We had, I think, 16 different winners by the time the playoffs ended. Of course, Kurt Busch ended up being out because he was hurt. But, yeah. So, there you have it. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is your Daytona 500 champion. Joey Logano was second, and Christopher Bell was third. Christopher Bell finishes a Daytona 500. He's struggled in the past to finish the race, but he was able to finish third today. So, yeah. So, like I said, overall, I thought it was a good race. I know some people didn't really like it, but I thought it was fine. I mean, it wasn't the best Daytona 500 I've ever seen, but it was certainly better than some other years. I mean, do you guys remember the 2021 Daytona 500? I mean, that was single file racing virtually. You had the red flag for rain. You had the big wreck before that, but then other than that, it was single file up until the crash at the end. I mean, I guess the crash at the end may have made it for some people, but no, I would not call this a bad Daytona 500. I thought it was fine. I mean, in terms of the broadcast, I thought the broadcast was marred by all the commercials. I mean, it was hard to at times even get into a flow of the race because you're just watching commercials over and over and over again. So hopefully, like I said, they can work on that and the broadcast can be better for later in the year, but we'll see. So yeah, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the champion of the Daytona 500. All right, so briefly want to talk about the Xfinity Series and truck races. So the Xfinity race, obviously Austin Hill won after a pretty scary crash on the last lap. Sam Mayer flipping over, going upside down, got turned, and it looked to that crash almost looked very similar to the way Ryan Newman flipped in the 2020 Daytona 500. The way he rolled over, and luckily nobody hit him because his driver's side was exposed, and luckily we didn't get another similar crash to that. But everybody was okay from that wreck. Obviously, Austin Hill won after yet again another race where caution comes out on the last lap, and it's just whoever's ahead. And Austin Hill was ahead, just narrowly beat John Hunter Nemechek. I'm glad they didn't penalize John Hunter Nemechek for the yellow line rule. He was below the yellow line, but he was certainly forced down there. And that's another gray area in NASCAR rulebook of, define, forcing a driver down, and, when is it okay to call that penalty and when it's not. But certainly this was one that was valid that I think you can't penalize John Hunter Nemechek for. If you watch the replay, he was clearly forced below the line. So yeah, Austin Hill, another plate win at Daytona. He's really turned into a good plate racer. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I think I think he's got a lot of potential. He's shown it in the Truck Series. He knows how to get things done. He knows how to win races, and he showed in the Xfinity Series last year as well. But I think he's going to do better on other than just super speedways. I think you're going to see him really start to shine. Junior Motorsports was up there late in the race. All four of their cars were there in prime position. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Brandon Jones can do with Junior Motorsports. Obviously, he left Joe Gibbs Racing with a sour taste in his mouth, to say the least, after getting turned at Martinsville by Ty Gibbs. So I'm sure he's hungry and he's ready to go, and he's definitely excited to be with the new team. So looking forward to that. I mean, I'm just sort of looking forward to who's really going to break out and do well in the Xfinity Series. I think we all knew going into last year that Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson were going to be probably the two biggest threats. Obviously, Cole Custer is back in the Xfinity Series. I think right away you can probably say he's probably already the guy to beat for the championship at this point. I mean, Cole Custer, last time we saw him in the Xfinity Series, he was a championship contender. I think he won like 7 or 8 races. I think it would have been 2019. So, he's certainly going to be a threat. He's obviously, can't imagine he's happy about losing his Cup ride, so he's going to want to, he's going to be more motivated to, do well in the Xfinity Series. I think John Hunter Nemechek will do good as well. I really don't know what happened with him in the trucks last year. Just didn't have the year you probably expected from him, after the 2021 season he had. But, I expect him to do well. I think time will tell whether he'll be a championship threat or not, but certainly, I mean, pencil in Cole Custer to be a threat for the championship. Obviously, Justin Allgaier as well. I mean, he's always there. He's always been consistent, so probably watch for him as well. Sam Mayer, I think Sam Mayer will certainly make strides this year as well. So yeah, that's sort of my review. It's honestly hard to remember the Xfinity race after today's Daytona 500, but yeah, Austin Hill. Look for him to do well this year. Look for him to have a breakout year. And trucks, I actually missed the truck race. I was at work. I was listening to some of it on MRN radio on my way home from work, but I guess I didn't really miss much. I mean, unfortunately, it was shortened by rain. There were a couple of wrecks I saw. Zane Smith won. Zane Smith's second straight win at Daytona, the defending truck champion. I think you can already pencil him as one of the favorites to win the championship. I mean, no question he's going to look to go back-to-back this season. And, probably, if he's able to do that, you probably see him in the Xfinity Series next year. I think he's really talented, and I think he knows how to win races, and he knows how to put himself in position at these super speedway races. And I was honestly surprised I didn't see much of him in today's Daytona 500. I said on my preview show that, I wouldn't be surprised if he could, pull out a top 10 finish, but wasn't really a factor today at all. He went a lap down a couple of times, just never even really saw him. But yeah, Zane Smith wins the truck race. It'll be interesting to see what the Kyle Busch Motorsports guys do. Chase Purdy, Jack Wood, a lot of them are, both of them really don't have a lot of experience, very new. I think it's definitely going to be a rebuilding year, I think, for KBM. I mean, they could get a win or two, but, time will tell, I guess. But I expect them to, there's definitely a learning curve there with both of them. But, we'll see what happens. Excited to see what Haley Deacon can do with Thor Sport. I mean, this is a great opportunity for her to shine and perhaps become the first female to win in one of the big 3 National Touring Series. So, excited to see that as well. But, yeah, Zane Smith wins the truck race. I should also mention, I did not watch the ARCA race, but you have to go and first of all watch the finish. Greg Van Alst made a last lap pass on Jason White to win the race. Very cool moment. I think Jamie Little was doing play-by-play and talked about how he had to leave the sport for, he raced for a long time, had to leave the sport to go get a full-time job. He said he ran out of money and came back, worked his way back to racing. Has 4 kids, 2 of them were at the race, and he was able to win the race. And just go watch his post-race interview. It's on my Instagram if you haven't seen it. But the emotion just pours out of this guy. I mean, it was one of the best post-race interviews I've seen in a long time. I mean, the emotion just absolutely poured out of him. It was really cool to see, especially for an ARCA race. Certainly the best ARCA racing interview I've ever seen. So, yeah, very cool. So go check that out. Big shout out to Greg Van Alst for winning the ARCA race. That was very cool to see. All right, so now that Daytona 500 is over, we have California coming up this weekend, Auto Club Speedway. It's the last race on this configuration. They're tearing it down and making a half-mile short track out of it. So that'll be interesting. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to miss California. I think I might be in the minority, but some fans don't really like it. But, I mean, California has provided for a lot of awesome moments in the sport. I mean, you look at the 2013, 2014 races. They were awesome. A lot of great racing there. I don't know, just something, I'm just going to miss that track. I know the races there recently haven't been all that great, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to miss the California Speedway, but I guess, perhaps it'll be interesting to see what they can do with another short track. I really hope they can fix these short track packages. The short tracks last year were not very good, but hopefully they can work on that and get it fixed, before they go racing at that half-mile track. We'll see what happens. I expect the Hendrick cars to be fast. I feel like, last couple of times they've went to California, the Hendrick cars have had a stranglehold on that track. They didn't go there in 2021 because of COVID, but 2020 Alex Bowman won. Last year, of course, Kyle Larson won in the big battle between him and Chase Elliott. I guess an early pick, without knowing practice or anything like that. Obviously, I'm a little biased here, but I'm gonna go with Chase Elliott. I think he ran good there last year. Obviously, he really had a tough playoff run last year, and I think he's looking to come back and sort of regain that confidence he had during the regular season last year. He runs good at California. He did last year. And he's going to want to rebound after, a very lackluster speed weeks for Chase Elliott. I mean, he not good in qualifying. He had a good little run there, a little finish there in the dual race. Ran the truck race, really didn't do much. Finished 10th, and then of course crashed out in the Daytona 500 and wasn't really a factor much today at all. Chase Elliott. Normally you see him up there and he'll lead some laps, but really not much of a factor at all. But I look for him to rebound. I look for him to step it up and get that first win of 2023 and set his sights on potentially a second championship by season's end. So I should note here too, Kyle Busch tweeted, if only it was 1998. Really thought we had that one. Bummed, but proud of our 8 group for sticking with this weekend, giving us a real good backup car. Good things to come this year. Yeah, Kyle Busch actually said on the radio when the caution came out coming to 2 to go, he said if that would have been 1998, it would have been over, because of course Dale Earnhardt won the Daytona 500 on the last lap and under caution with 2 to go. That was before the overtime rule, but it's not 1998, unfortunately, for Kyle Busch. But all right, so that is it. Congratulations to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. on winning the Daytona 500. And looking forward to California next week. I'll be back with my recap show and a look ahead to the week after that, Las Vegas as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to my channel here at NASCAR Images on YouTube, and obviously follow me on Instagram at NASCAR Images. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. This was NASCAR Images on YouTube.